Wow! Just eats up this straight. A kilometre long, it's like it doesn't exist. We're going to be brave over the crest. Oh my word, that's 200 miles an hour. That is wild. Absolutely wild.
Yes, 200 miles an hour. The double ton. That's what the new McLaren W1 was hitting by the end of Mugello's main straight, before braking, if I'm honest, a touch early at the 200 metre balls. Just extraordinary. But then this is a car that's following in some rather fast tyre tracks.
This is where it all began. 30 years ago, behind this centrally situated Nardi steering wheel, the McLaren F1. The beginning of McLaren's one cars. And this one is particularly special because it's XP5, the very car that Andy Wallace did those legendary top speed runs in. It's also special to me because it happens to be the first F1 that I ever drove. Still haven't quite worked out a way of getting out of an F1 gracefully. We've got a few of the things from the period over here, so the compact service laptop, photograph negatives, I remember those from my early days in journalism. Obviously the 24-hour Le Mans trophy, Mika Häkkinen's race suit, and my favourite thing, Facom titanium toolset that came with every McLaren F1. So light these are. And a number I think it's worth mentioning for this and the others, a power to weight ratio of 560 brake horsepower per tonne. Move on 20 years and we've got iPads, we've got tinted carbon fibre and a Jensen Button race suit. It's also the era of McLaren automotive and the P1, which was in that first vanguard of hybrid hypercars. Power to weight ratio, 616 brake horsepower per tonne. And here we are at the present day with the brand new McLaren W1 and the Lando Norris race suit. And you might be thinking, well, it's still a hybrid hypercar. How much has it really moved on? Well, how about a power to weight ratio, albeit with a dry weight, of over 900 brake horsepower per tonne?
But is this new W1 more than just fast? To find out, we're going to press some buttons, have a look under the skin, and drive it on both track, and perhaps more importantly, road. This episode is driven by Hagerty, who, in case you don't know, provide car insurance that's designed by drivers for drivers. So, if you have a special car that you don't drive every day, like one of these perhaps, then take a trip to Hagerty.com/Henry, or pick up the phone, give them a call, and speak to a like-minded enthusiast about a quote.
Quintessential Tuscany. Cypress trees, their shadows painting a sort of zebra crossing down the road. Just beautiful. So let's deal with some of the extraordinary numbers in this car first. 1,257 brake horsepower, 988 pounds-feet of torque. And it produces that from a couple of sources, but just to put it into some sort of context, the P1 produced 903 brake horsepower, 664 pounds-feet of torque, but that's not the crazy thing. This new V8, this new 4-litre 90-degree flat plane crank V8, which I know sounds very much like the old V8, but it's not. That engine alone produces 915 brake horsepower and an identical 664 pounds-feet of torque. So just the engine alone, more powerful than the P1.
The fundamental stats of the V8's architecture may be identical to what's in a 750S, but this 4-litre 90-degree V8 really is all new. Labelled MHP8, it's 13 kilos lighter than the old V8 and 40 millimetres shorter as well. The all-aluminium engine has plasma coating on the cylinders, DLC-coated sliding finger followers, hollow valves, new bigger twin-scroll turbochargers, and both port and direct injection to help achieve a redline at 9,200 RPM.
And then you add in the radial flux e-motor, and that adds another 342 brake horsepower and 342 pounds-feet of torque. As a consequence, this has, well, the best acceleration figures of any road-going McLaren ever. 0 to 62, 2.7 seconds. 0 to 124 miles an hour or 200 kilometers an hour, 5.8 seconds. 0 to 300 kilometers an hour, so 186, less than 12.7 seconds.
If you're looking for comparisons, well, those numbers are exactly the same as the mighty Aston Martin Valkyrie, and the McLaren P1 took 4 seconds or 30% longer to reach the 186 mile an hour mark. In other words, there is a humongous amount of performance on tap.
So does it feel unwieldy, unusable, just so sort of muscle-bound that you couldn't really conceive of driving it slowly? Not at all. It feels remarkably easy to drive. Obviously just 2 pedals, you can leave it in auto if you want. We've got these rocker switches here, and you leave it in comfort on both, so both the chassis, the handling side and the powertrain side. It really is very easy to drive. It's obviously fairly quiet. Yes, the suspension is firm, you can feel the stiffness in the overall tub, but again, left in comfort, it's perfectly acceptable, and you've got the nose lift button down here which actually acts really nice and quickly. But you sit in this and you've got beautiful sight lines, really thin A-pillars, they say they're the thinnest ones they've ever done. And instantly you have confidence, you have that sense of connection with the car. And a lot of that must come down to the steering. We've got hydraulically power assisted steering, which McLaren has persevered with, and I'm so pleased they have. It just makes all the difference. The same with the brakes, completely uncorrupted hydraulic system in that, and it just makes you feel at one with the car straight away.
In comfort mode, the electric motor is really only used to torque fill the gear changes, and while there is an all-electric mode, it's of somewhat limited use.
The battery, just 1.4 kilowatt hours back there, meaning we've got a range of just 2 kilometers. Even by the standards of, well, hybrid hypercars, that's a very small range. Enough to get you to the end of your very long driveway without waking anyone up, but that's about it. You could obviously turn it on and sort of crawl silently through a village, sort of without disturbing people, but the battery is definitely there for performance, not for lots of zero emissions motoring.
The whole electric system delivers almost twice the power of the one found in the P1, while also being 40% lighter. However, overall, the W1's weight is a claimed 1399 kilos dry, which is almost identical to the older car. That's pretty good for a hybrid without being exceptionally skinny. But then it's hardly a sparse, stripped-out interior.
There's lots in here that does feel very familiar McLaren, so things like these paddles here on their rockers, so in fact you can just use one paddle and it controls both. But there's also plenty that's new and makes this W1 feel a bit different, a bit special, I suppose. Starting with inno knit, which is this material here, and some cars have got it sort of all over the seats as well, but I like it here because it's got little LEDs behind, so you can change the colour of those up on here as well, so you can go from sort of purple to green to turquoise to red to whatever you like, really. And it's just sort of, it just sparkles behind it. I like that, it's rather fun. This wheel is actually new as well, so still very simple, still beautifully thin-rimmed Alcantara here, just the 2 buttons, aero and boost, but it's got more of a sort of flat top and bottom. We've now got the sort of the rev lights really sort of seamlessly integrated in there, which I really like as well. Obviously the seat in here is fixed, so as well as the steering wheel and binnacle all moving, the pedal box moved as well, which just, it's on a sort of spring like that, little lever down here. Always works well. I have to say, being selfish, being tall, I do like a movable pedal box. Makes it very easy to get comfortable. There is a bit of luggage space in here, certainly more than some hybrid hypercars I've driven recently. You can access it just through the gap there, or if you need more room, then flip the headrest forwards like that. Enough room for a couple of squashy bags, which, given this is, well, it feels usable to drive, it should be usable in terms of some sort of luggage. Not sure I'd want to try and lash some shopping back there, but you know. Would you take it shopping?
I imagine you would if the supermarket was at the end of a road like this.
When you find yourself on a good piece of road, like these ones near Mugello, right, on some of the roads that made up the old Mugello road circuit around here, you want to pop it into sport for both the powertrain and for handling. Now we have the hybrid acting as a performance aid. And the suspension's that bit firmer. Pop ESC into dynamic, and it's just wild. It's a lovely car to kind of get into a flow with down the road, and you can drive incredibly quickly without really troubling the upper reaches of the engine. But when you do, there's real character in this car. And remarkably, you don't feel like you can't use it. Again, that sense of connection. You get more noise in here, and there is a lot of interesting noise. It's not sort of spine tingling like the old F1 and its naturally aspirated engine, but boy, is it angry. And it's like a P1 on steroids, with all of the chuffs and whistles and crashing waves of air being forced through the system. You also get quicker shifts from the gearbox and the cracks on the shifts as well to add to the cacophony.
I really hadn't expected the drivetrain to be interesting beyond its immense powers of propulsion, but it's genuinely emotionally engaging and entertaining.
To me, in sport mode, it's like you've got sort of 3 drivetrains in one, because obviously you've got the response of the electric motors down low, then the mid-range, all that punch from the turbochargers, which are said to spool up 30% faster than in a P1. And you get that sort of slight overboost, that sense of the engine really sort of filling its lungs, breathing. And then at the top end, you get this animalistic, rabid, sort of naturally aspirated feel. It's extraordinary. It revs all the way to 9,200 RPM. And there's no sense of this being a sort of turbocharged engine that dies off. It is wild. And yet the chassis is so good that you can actually drive it hard on the road and enjoyably. It gives you so much confidence, and you feel not only where the front end is through this fabulous steering, which is direct but also just calm as you tip it in, but you also have that fabulous feel from the rear end. So you feel really connected to those massive 335 section rear tyres. We're on a Trofeo RS, so not a kind of real specific road tyre. Wow. I'd say it feels more agile and alert, but also more drivable than a P1, which is extraordinary.
In the past, I've often felt that hypercars have really needed a track to come alive, to feel a sense of connection in the corners. They are an event on the road, but not cars you really play with. This W1, it has the feel of a smaller sports car that you can push the grip limits, work the e-diff, and generally hustle.
Even though the suspension obviously becomes stiffer in sport mode, it still rides the bumps well. This is not the smoothest bit of road. I can't believe how wild it feels now, and yet how docile and easy to drive it was sort of through town on the way here. Wow.
Obviously on the road, the W1 is missing its headline aero figures, because in sport mode it only generates 1/5 of the downforce that it creates in race mode. Not that you really need it, of course. However, without the wing extended, I'd say the W1 also lacks a bit of drama visually. It's not as voluptuously pretty as the P1 or as pert and clean as the F1. It's quite menacing, but not instantly memorable.
Where the beauty in this car lies is definitely in the details. I mean, there are obviously big bits of theatre like these new anhedral doors, but it's when you get up close to these doors and see, a bit like in Senna, how the air is meant to move through this, all these organic shapes, the way this comes up and then into the mirror spar there. That's where the beauty lies in this car, I think. I do love being able to see the suspension through there as well. That's always cool.
And talking of what's under the skin,
you can see the electric motor for activating this front wing here, but what I really want to talk about is the front suspension. So we've got these beautiful 3D printed titanium wishbones here, and all their aero shapes, and then pushrod activated front suspension, so we can get all the air going through here. But we've got sort of three elements to the suspension. So normal springs and dampers up here. Then you've got the sort of kinetic system, which we've seen on other McLarens over the years, which is a sort of virtual anti-roll bar that links each side. And then this up here. So we've got a torsion bar between this and this big damper up here. Normally it's free to move, but in race and race plus mode, this sort of locks out basically, and it's to control the heave. So what you want is a really stable platform. When it's locked down, if it's just pushing down like this with all that monstrous downforce, but you still get compliance in the corners with individual movements on the wheels.
the carbon aerosol monocoque is made of pre-preg carbon fibre, and you can see how pinched it is at the front to help direct the airflow. The massive rear diffuser is also a structural element and acts as part of the car's crash structure. And in case you're intrigued, as I was, these interesting little wavy structures are for side impact protection.
Round the back, we've got a more conventional setup with no pushrod suspension because, well, by this point, the airflow should all be going through that massive diffuser. We don't have to worry so much about controlling the airflow in this area. But essentially, the same things going on. Controlling the heave up here, they have this Z bar, which looks like a sort of very thick anti-roll bar, but actually each end goes a different way, hence Z, and this is controlling the heave at the rear of the car.
You can also see the electric motors for the rear wing, which work in tandem with the front wing motors to manage the enormous downforce.
650 kilos at the rear, 350 kilos at the front, for a grand total of 1,000 kilos of downforce.
It reaches those peaks at 174 miles an hour, so to access all that ground effects aero, you need a track. And you need to press the big blue button in the roof. The ride height drops by 37mm at the front and 17mm at the rear, increasing the rake, while the rear wing extends by 320mm, which effectively elongates the diffuser below it, as well as offering air brake and DRS functions.
Out onto track and Mugello. It is quite the circuit. 50 metres of elevation change we have here, and some nice blind crests to cope with as well. So you need a car that's going to make you feel confident. We've got the car in race plus mode, so you've got two race modes, and they basically affect the damping, so the heat damper is kind of there in both, but race is just for sort of slightly bumpier tracks, and then this, which is a grade 1 track, super smooth. You can actually stiffen it right down, lock it right down, really bring that front end in. It's extraordinary through these chicanes. Already we're getting the cars up to temp.
It's such a cool roller coaster of a circuit with some really spicy corners.
Into the Arrabbiata complex. This is where we should start feeling the downforce, 1,000 kilos downforce. Wait, and turn in, up over the crest, try and spot my point for the exit. Wow, even in this stiffest mode though, it's amazing how well it rides the curbs. You really bang it in. You have to be careful on the exit, because otherwise you'll very quickly find out if you've put the throttle on too early, you'll just get that bit of push, it'll walk you across the track in the blink of an eye.
There are two powertrain modes available in race. GP is for maintaining battery performance over a longer stint with the boost button for maximum power when you need it, while Sprint is like a qualifying mode that gives you everything for a lap or so.
I'm going to put it into Sprint for this, so now we have the full 1,257 brake horsepower all the time. Wow, it just eats brakes up this straight, kilometre long, it's like it doesn't exist. We're going to be brave over the crest. Oh my word, that's 200 miles an hour. Not much slower than the F1 cars are hitting around here. Wow. Overcommitted there. Suddenly you've got all that power and I'm missing braking points. But it's actually still remarkably faithful. I mean, that was so cool. Brake deep, feel the nose, character rear. Just got to remember to keep looking up, keep looking ahead, because everything's coming at you so quickly. Breathe down here, trust the aero. It's so drivable. They actually increased the weighting of the steering for race as well, just to give you a bit more feedback. That is such a cool corner. I'm still not committing massively to it, but just coming up over the crest, seeing the scenery around you, these red, white and green painted curbs. This is a road car. I mean, McLaren has a massive history in Can-Am, the wildest race cars ever. And this, you know, this is Can-Am levels of power in a road car.
Clearly, with all that power, you need a decent set of brakes, and the W1s are full of feel because they don't have to juggle regen. They measure 390mm at the front with 6-piston calipers, and the carbon ceramic discs have an additional ceramic layer, which apparently brings greater durability but also allows for a more aggressive brake pad. And it's a car that does like you to brake deep to get the weight on the nose and help the turning.
So nice when you kind of do start braking harder, trail braking into the corners.
And then of course there is that big maximum commitment stop at the end of the straight.
Oh, that's 200 metres. Easy for the car, not for me.
And then all too soon it was all over. And a cool down lap for me in the car allowed for some thoughts.
This is obviously, in aero terms, it's a tribute to, well, McLaren's championship winning cars from that ground effects era. It's quite a tribute. Did we need a car faster than the P1 or 750S for that matter? Yes, of course we did, because more power is always good. It's so drivable. That's the extraordinary thing. Once you start to get your head around it, I mean, I've had precious few laps in this car on a circuit. I don't really know, and yet still I just want to drive it more. I just want to get to learn it more and more and more.
The 399 customers paying £2 million each are certainly getting a car that is more than just fast. McLaren talked about the W1 having a breadth of ability like its predecessors F1 and P1, and it certainly does. But even more so. That might not sound like a scintillating superpower, but when you think about the way the W1 is genuinely easy to drive slowly on the road all the way to warp speed on a track, its chameleon-like ability to adapt to a wide range of scenarios is so impressive. It's also a car that, for all its formidable numbers on paper, actually impresses more with its unquantifiable tactility and character.
It's a car you really need to drive to appreciate. It doesn't come through from the numbers and a spec sheet. The way that engine goes through its different layers to an absolutely crazy top end, I just hadn't expected it. So the W1, yes, I think it does belong in that famous lineage.